Good morning, it's Elize-Marie here again. Today I want to share with you an encouraging story about two men, both with the same name, Saul. The first story is from the 1 Samuel chapter 9 and 10, and it's about a young man who's instructed by his father to go and look for their donkeys. It seems the donkeys have escaped from their pen, and Saul's father says, please go and look for my donkeys. A task which Saul probably didn't have much of a choice, he just had to do it, because it was his father. So Saul and his servant embarks on a journey of looking for the lost donkeys. And for 3 days they wander in the whole region, asking around, looking for their donkeys, but with no success. And after 3 days, after they wanted to give up, the servant suggested, how about we just go into the nearby town? I hear there's a man of God. Maybe he can give us some advice about where our donkeys is. So they go in. And this is Saul, who's on a mission just to find the donkeys. But he encounters a prophet of God, Samuel. Samuel has, of course, been prepared by God that the man he's about to encounter will be Israel's next king. But Saul knew nothing of this. For him, it was just a 3-day period of probably very boring time of walking around looking for these donkeys. Maybe feeling this is such a waste of time. I can be doing such better things with my time, but I have to do this. In the same way that you and I sometimes experience life as seasons of waiting, seasons of nothing happening, or things happening to us that we don't have much of a choice about, and we just have to do things or have to endure, and we just feel frustrated. We feel maybe impatient, maybe just insignificant. What is going on? I don't really know. What am I doing? But what happens next to Saul in this story is a little bit surreal, because he just walks into town wanting to find out about his donkeys, and he encounters Samuel. And over the next day or so, Saul is invited to a very posh dinner where he's the main guest, the honored guest. He receives the best portion of meat. He spends an entire evening listening to a prophet. The next morning, when he wants to return home, he's suddenly anointed as the commander of God's people. This is Saul, who was just looking for his donkeys. But God had an appointment with Saul. And I want to point you to 1 Samuel chapter 10, verse 9, because I think this, to me, is the most significant part of this story. And in verse 9 it says, so it was when Saul, had turned his back to go from Samuel, that God gave him another heart. God changed Saul's heart in this encounter. See, most of us would maybe like to focus on the fact that he came looking for donkeys and he walked away a king. I'd like to focus on the fact that he came looking for donkeys and he came away with a godly heart. What does it mean when God changes our hearts? I think it means he changes our desires. He changes our focus, our attitude. He changes our perspective on where we are at, what we are encountering, and how we approach whatever is in front of us. You see, friends, whatever season you are finding yourself in, whether it's a season of waiting, a season of having to do mundane tasks, a season of feeling insignificant, if you are willing that God will change your heart in this season, you will live with an expectation of what God is doing in you and through you, irrelevant of what's going on around you. But let me show you the next gentleman, also with the name of Saul. But then he encountered God and he became Paul. And he embarked on a life of relationship with Jesus Christ, where Jesus changed his heart regularly. And he became so consumed with the love of Jesus that wherever he was, whatever season he found himself in, he just wanted to share the gospel of Jesus. Please remember that he was called to share the gospel with the Gentiles. In our mind, that means speaking in front of hundreds or thousands of people, sharing the gospel. But we find him in Philippians chapter 1, not standing in front of a multitude, sharing the gospel. We find Paul in prison, chained to 2 Roman soldiers with a locked door right in front of him. To most of us, that would seem, wow, what a disappointment. It's not good use of Paul's time. It's a waste of time. He should be out there. He should be spreading the gospel. But friends, Paul's attitude has developed as he has grown in his relationship with Jesus to expect Jesus in anything that he encounters. And as he looked around, he realized he was right next to 2 Roman soldiers. So what did Paul do? He started sharing the gospel with them. Paul did not need a massive platform to do what he felt Jesus called him. Whatever season he found himself in, he just did it right there because his heart attitude was focused on Jesus and what Jesus wants to do in him and through him. Let me show this to you. In chapter 1 of Philippians, verse 20, we see Paul's attitude, and he says, he's writing to the Philippians to say, please relax. I know you're worried about me, that I'm in jail, but trust me, it's all good. And in verse 20, he says, according to my earnest expectation and hope, that in nothing I shall be ashamed, but with all boldness, as always, so now also Christ will be magnified. Can you see that Paul lives with expectation and hope, even if he is in prison, chained to soldiers? He does not see that as a limitation. He does not see that as a mundane task. He does not see that as a season of nothingness or waiting. He sees that Christ will be magnified in every situation, and that he will not be ashamed because he will keep on sharing. He will keep on living with expectation. Do you know that word expectation literally means with your head and neck stretched out, focusing on what's ahead? Jesus is inviting you and me to learn from Paul to live with an expectant heart, irrespective of what season we are finding ourselves in. Paul didn't have a choice about being in jail. It was forced upon him by the Romans. But yet his attitude was, Jesus, in every situation, come, change my heart and use me in whatever way. So friends, as we find ourselves in whatever season, whether it is in the queue for grocery shopping, whether it is in whatever season of waiting we are in our career or in our ministry or in our family setups, whether we feel insignificant, I want to say to you, cultivate a heart that says, Jesus, I live with expectation of what you want to do in my heart in this season. Prepare me, Jesus, for this season and for the next as I wait upon you. May you be encouraged by this, and may you live with a hunger and an expectant heart to see how Jesus is changing your heart in this season. Thank you very much, and be blessed.